Hey everyone, and welcome to the NPC Dungeon. For those of you who've been with me for a while, you might notice this is a bit of a new format for me, and for those of you who haven't, this is a bit of a new format for me. I usually do DM, GM advice videos, advice for players who play tabletop games, stuff like that, but you might know that I do pixel art. I'm a pixel artist. I have pixel art in a lot of my videos, so today I thought I'd do a bit of a pixel art time-lapse for you all. This particular character is one of 4 that I made for a new tabletop RPG system that I just learned called Lancer. It takes place 15,000 years in the future, where human beings have traveled among the stars and fight in giant mech suits. It's a system by Miguel Lopez and Tom Bloom, and before I get started, let me go ahead and say I made 4 different characters just so that I have experience making characters for this game. I made like a whole party of characters, but I wasn't super happy with how those initial sprites turned out, so I went ahead and remade them 3 times. I have 4 versions of each sprite, and in this video I go across the process of making the 4 versions of one of those sprites. So let's go ahead and get started and let's draw something, I guess. So this is the very first sprite. You can see I'm kind of starting with an eye shape. Recently I've had this weird obsession with making these very large detailed eyes for my sprites. I was kind of going back and forth with myself on whether I wanted a 1 pixel specula or a 2 pixel specula. That's just the shine on the eye. I was trying to make a different kind of head shape for this. You might notice in a lot of my sprites on my videos I have the same head shape, but those are also 48 pixels tall and forward facing. These are in the 3/4 perspective, so I'm trying to do different head shapes for that. I gave her a collar here. You can see in the world of Lancer there is a type of collar that your characters can wear that can project a holographic image over their face to kind of hide their identity. This character in particular is a celebrity, so I thought that'd be useful for her. She's kind of an ace pilot, daredevil kind of character contacted by Union, the government of this system, to kind of do missions for them every now and then. You can also kind of see after I do the hair, I made 2 lines on either side of the sprite. Instead of making like a blocked out silhouette, what I do is when I first start a sprite, I draw the head and the face first, then I make 2 lines on either side, 1 line on either side rather, and then I kind of carve out the body from there. You can also see I made a little line beneath one of her eyes. Also in the system there is something called data plating. You can have either jewelry or just different plates kind of on your face that allow you to have like a heads-up display, that allow you to communicate non-vocally with other individuals. They don't show up very well on this sprite. They're just a few pixels. But that's kind of fun about this smaller sizing, I think. You can kind of make little shapes whatever you want them to be, if that's a good way of saying that. What I do is before I start really coloring, I just kind of block in different colors and then I shade it and highlight it after that. After I shade and highlight, that's when I start adding in my outline color. I try to make an outline color that's just a shade darker that I already have on the sprite, kind of recycling shades there around the outline. I think the last one that I do is the shoes. And here is the final product that we end up with. You can see I made the data platings kind of a gold color. I'm trying to use the same colors. I use a lot of warm colors for her. I used the gray for the collar, and I wasn't super happy with it. Looking back, it's not bad. It has a very specific look, a very specific aesthetic to it, but let's see if we can do better. So here I start using my usual size format that I like to typically use, my 48 pixels tall, 48 by 16 to 32. This ends up being more like 32 pixels wide because she's in that 3/4 perspective. You can only see 3/4 of her face, as opposed to the sprite next to her. You can see a high elf that I made a while back that's in this size format, so I use her for reference. I have the original sprite for this character and I have that high elf there as well. I often find when I'm making collars for a character, they end up looking like a detective's collar at first, but this one kind of takes shape as I go. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do for the leg there. I eventually just said, oh, let's just do something and go for it and see what happens. And what I decided on was just kind of making both the legs just kind of individually, and it looked okay. And instead of like having one cross in front of the other, I had like a bit of a cloth bit kind of over the front of them, if it makes any sense. If you can see the left hand that I have kind of coming out a little bit, the balled up fist, I settled on a technique for that where I just kind of have the hand and the arm in a line in between the two, just that kind of vertical line coming down. Really makes it look like a balled up fist without having to do a whole lot of detail. I ended up making it a little bit smaller here. You can see I also gave her kind of a bit of a rope there. I don't know why, I just wanted to have some kind of utility and I thought that'd be kind of a cool thing to kind of have her carry, I guess. and then I just make it larger again because I want her to be wearing gloves. It looks kind of weird right now. That is just, looks like it's just part of her arm, part of her skin. I have more room here to add detail for the data plating, as you see there. I'm using the same colors, the same gold, the same red color. I have more room for shades and highlights here, so I kind of go a little crazy with that. And I find working in smaller sprite size, a lot of my sprites that I've been doing recently are in that 16 by 32 sizing, 32-ish pixels tall. And in doing that, I realized, I guess I learned how to make better use of my pixels, especially in shading and highlights. One pixel can make all the difference, and we know that, but really taking a step away to smaller sprite sizes can really help reinforce that knowledge. And you can see here I'm kind of just blocking in color like I said before, adding in highlights after that, and this is where I start doing the outlining, where you can see I'm just using a shade tone darker. In some cases I just use the entire shade tone. The hair is not the case. You can see where I use different tones for different pixels on the hair there, but for the jacket I kind of have just one solid color because I wanted to have that contrast from the body to the jacket. I changed the collar from just a collar to the collar on the jacket. Now that kind of jacket collar is the thing that emits that holographic image if she wants to do that, to kind of hide her identity if she's like around a lot of people, don't want people to know who she is. She's a celebrity after all. And here's the final product again. In some of my more recent sprites, I haven't given them mouths. This one I decided on giving her a mouth. I figured she's a larger sprite. I just wanted to see how it would work. I used a different shape than I usually do, and I'm happy with it. So I wanted to go back and remake the initial sprite, but I didn't want to remake it exactly yet. I wanted to make it smaller. I thought in my smaller size format, I wouldn't be able to have room for all of the outlines. That was not true. I initially just tried an approach like you saw a second ago where I just had the color blocked in. I didn't like that, so I remade it entirely. Here I am trying to make a very different, unique kind of head shape, and I just settled on the basic square shape I've used a few times. But working in smaller size frames also helps you kind of let go of certain predisposed taste that you have and realize, okay, no, this still looks okay. Like the eye is just a basic 2-pixel eye shape, the head's just a square, and it still ended up looking pretty okay, I think. You can also see, like I said before, the collar just looks like a detective collar, but I kind of fiddled with the sprite quite a bit to get it to look right. I didn't do the 2-line thing that I said I did earlier for the initial sprite because I already had a basic body shape kind of figured out, and I kind of just worked from there. I had the hand on the hip at first. I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go with that, so I just kind of jumped from that detail. I find if I am not quite sure what I wanted to do with something, I just take a break from that, jump to another detail, and I find that I'm still kind of thinking about it in the back of my head. Like that hand, for example, that I just drew, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with that. I think I get rid of it in a second. Yeah, just now I got rid of it to kind of try to draw a little bit of a jacket shape. And then I realized, oh, there's a jacket on the other side too. I need to draw that in. And I find I actually made the sprite a little bit too small at first, so I had more room than I thought I had. If you just start dropping in pixels, you'll find that you'll surprise yourself, actually. Whenever I start making sprites of this size format, I initially start thinking, oh, I'll never fit the whole sprite here, but I make it way too small, and then I can just kind of like mess around with little details. And here I am changing the sizing again. And I think this is where I start kind of messing around with that other arm, seeing if I can kind of make it different sizes. And remember that arm and hand trick that I had before where I just have a line separating the two to make it look like a balled up fist? I end up inadvertently deriving the same thing here. I just kind of shifted her forward a little bit to give her a little bit more motion in her kind of stance. And here's where I'm messing around with the arm. I kind of put it like a mid-range kind of height, then I make it way too low, then I make it really high, and then I go right back and just add the little line there and done. Pixar in general is trial and error. Like, here's more trial and error. I just made the eyes lower to make room for the hair, didn't like it, so I decided to kind of get rid of the outline for the hair. I'm trying to work on which areas, because you see my approach is very outline based. People say don't do that, but I do it anyway. Whatever I do I want, I guess. But I'm trying to figure out, because you can get to the same point at the end either way. Just you have a lot of weird kind of artifacty things that you inadvertently end up keeping when you do a more outline based approach. Outlines where they shouldn't be. Sometimes objects get a little bit thicker than you wanted them to be, like the jacket, for example. I kept the outline there, but I wasn't happy with the contrast, so I used, as you can see, like a very dark outline around it. I try to keep contrast between the jacket and the rest of the body by making a dark outline. That didn't work, so I just made it a dark color that's already there. A darker version of the yellow, a darker version of the red for the gloves there, but it's a little taller than what I wanted. So in a second, I don't know if I show it, but in a second I get rid of the pixels on the top and the bottom and just kind of blend that in with the rest. So in the final product, you can see I got rid of the pixels at the very bottom of the shoes, top of the hair, kind of blend the rest in. And the shoes are interesting. They were just one pixel L shape surrounded by an outline, but then when I added that dark outline, the whole shoe shape really came together. So I had to kind of keep that centralized line between the shoes there. And when all that's said and done, I decided to go ahead and remake the actual initial sprite. So I kept the same size format, but I tried to do something a little bit different with the proportions here. I made the head a little bit smaller. I used a very similar shape to what I used a second ago with a very small sprite, the kind of basic square shape with the rounded 1 pixel off edges there. But I made a very different kind of jaw shape, a very different kind of back of the head shape. It ended up getting covered in the collar anyway. And now that I have a more idealized idea of what I want her to look like, it was much easier to kind of go from here, give her very kind of forward stance. That right hand, for the longest time, I wasn't quite sure whether I wanted it to be in the pocket or out of the pocket. And then I realized, wait, she has a fighting stance. Why would her hand be in her pocket? So I kind of pulled the hand out a little bit there. It's a little wider than 16 pixels wide, but I guess I gave myself 32 by 32, I could say, so it's fine. In fact, it's smaller than it needed to be in that case. I added 1 pixel there above the hand to kind of show the arm. I moved it just now to show the arm is just an actual arm, not just a weird blob appendage coming off of the body. I show the hair is in braids by having 1 pixel in between each line there. And after I block the color in, I'm just adding in some outline colors here. You can see I'm borrowing colors from previous sprites that I made, so I'm keeping them kind of consistent looking. If I need to make a new color, I do. But by the end here, I don't think I had to, just because I'd made this sprite so many times. I knew this sprite so well at this point. And you can see, even in this small format, I'm better now at giving myself room for different shades of highlights, different shades of shading there. For the hair, the highlights in the hair too, I'll say, I used to put my highlights right against the end because my light source comes from the top left. It's important to know where your light source is coming from in pixel art, or art in general, I guess. But I decided to kind of just shift it up a little bit so it's not right against the outline there. And instead of having that sprite shown by itself, I have it next to all of them. Here's the final product, all of them together. You can see the evolution, and really near the end, instead of just it evolving to different sprites, I just kind of started trying different styles. I have my usual 32 by 48 kind of style after my initial one, then the small one, and then I go into the same size again in the end there. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't worry, I still am doing GM advice videos. Thought I'd go ahead and say that now. But if you liked this time lapse, let me know. I have a few more that I want to post. I have a few more approaches that I want to try out too, so the time lapse looks a little cleaner. And as always, if you have any feedback, let me know. Feel free to leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe if you really liked it, and until next time, I'm gonna keep this phrase because I liked it. Let's draw something.